I know this topic is really about dealing with pressure and I suppose by extension, anxiety as well. But maybe a good starting point would be for us to really understand what is pressure.
That is a great question, because it's something that we live with every single day, but actually, do we take the time to define it? So scientifically, pressure is defined as the physical force of an object. But what we're talking about here is human beings and the pressure that we have. And so when I think about it, there's four key areas that are closely linked. There's the emotional and physical pressure, and then there's also the internal and external pressure. So from an emotional perspective, you've got your mindset and how you're feeling in your thoughts. What's your internal state like? And then you've obviously got physical pressure, which might well be how your body's reacting, or literally physical pressure on your body. And then internal and external is also interesting, because external, you might well have pressure from your boss or your family or the world in general. But also there's an element of internal pressure. What do we put on ourselves? What's that internal voice that's running to just top things up for us?
That's interesting that you say that, because I mean, a lot of the things I suppose we don't associate with pressure per se, but more like just part and parcel of dealing with the world around us. So I suppose, how do we kind of define it for ourselves in the way that we can acknowledge that this is in fact pressure, regardless of whether it's good or bad, which we can talk about later, of course. And then at least in our mind, we have a mental idea, a good idea of what it is and what we should be taking note of.
I think what you just touched upon, which is really important, is that we're all so different. One thing for me that might feel like a pressurized situation for you might well be a walk in the park, something super easy that you wouldn't put much thought into. And so I think the first step is to get really clear and define for ourselves, what does pressure mean for me, and how does it show up in my body, in my mind? Because again, the feelings that you and I might have, or anyone, might well be different. I think a really good place to start, though, is that so often pressure shows up in a physical response and it manifests in our body. So if we can check in those moments and say, hey, my palms are sweating, or my heart rate's increased, I'm feeling a little queasy, or something's a bit of a miss, I think that's a great indicator of where actually the pressure might have tipped over into something that's not serving you as well.